Revelation 552. From the 22nd of August 1938. In a voice. But never compulsion. Child first learns to use will. Everything done on earth will be evaluated according to the degree of love that dominates man at the time of execution. And the reward will also be measured accordingly. If you now have the desire in you to stand helpfully by a person, and you perform a good deed in this desire, only always out of love for your neighbor, then such a deed will have an effect for eternity, as it were, because a divine power is inherent in it, by virtue of which the soul spiritualizes itself and separates itself from the desire of the body. Although it still dwells in its shell, it has nevertheless moved considerably closer to the divine spirit and can now be strengthened by the divine grace that overflows into the loving heart. The quiet voice of God precedes every activity of love. It will always admonish the human child to do what is beneficial for its soul. However, as soon as opposing forces take effect which want to determine the heart to do only that which could bring the human being earthly benefit, then the human being has to fight an inner battle, and free will is forced to express itself. And so every action will be preceded by an instruction from God to do the right thing, but the own will be decisive, and thus man can never be put into a compulsive state to do what his will does not approve of. He therefore learns to use his will much earlier than he hears the divine voice within himself, and will therefore also be responsible for his actions. The very first decision is often decisive for the later development of the soul. A child who turns to love by itself will not run the risk of ever getting lost, because the soul turned to goodness of its own accord, was supported by grace and therefore did not easily lose its connection with the good spirit world. The power is granted to it again and again, and it again begets new works of love. While a being, which only nourishes self-love in itself, will seek all advantages for its body, but creates a bad state for the soul, because it lets it starve and it hardly becomes aware of its actual purpose without divine grace, and therefore its activity in love is truly very small. Whereas a loving soul cannot do enough for itself, because the spirit of love works in it continuously. Every good deed is an inexhaustible source of grace. It again supplies people with strength to work in love, and therefore every good deed also has the blessing in itself that it awakens love where it is still dormant, and thus a single deed of love can have an infinitely happy and beneficial effect on the soul. Amen.